Chapter 5 Aristocracy of Talent. When an individual is miserable, what does it most of all behoove him to do? To complain of this man or that, of this thing or of that? To fill the world and the street with lamentation, objurgation? Not so at all, the reverse of so. All moralists advise him not to complain of any person or of anything, but of himself only. He is to know of a truth that being miserable he has been unwise, Had he faithfully followed nature and her laws, nature, ever true to her laws, would have yielded fruit and increase and felicity to him. But he has followed other than nature's laws, and now nature, her patience with him being ended, leaves him desolate, answers with very emphatic significance to him, "No, not by this road, my son. By another road shalt thou attain well-being. This, thou perceivest, is the road to ill-being. Quit this." So do all moralists advise, that the man penitently say to himself first of all, "Behold, I was not wise enough. I quitted the laws of fact, which are also the laws of God, and mistook for them the laws of sham and semblance. Which are called the devil's laws. Therefore I am here." So in this opener, Carlyle is making the case that when an individual is miserable, all moralists, so this is a very ecumenical point of view, everyone, whether they believe in God or just a fact or nature, those in his mind are synonyms, as well as the fakeness, semblances, and devil, those are synonyms as well. All moral points of view would advise this miserable man to not blame the environment or blame other people, but blame himself by saying, "I was not wise enough." Here, by the way, objurgation, a quick definition, means rebuke severely or scold. So he is not to issue lamentations or objurgations. He should instead point the finger to himself. Neither with nations that become miserable is it fundamentally otherwise. The ancient guides of nations, prophets, priests, or whatever their name, were well aware of this, and down to a late epoch impressively taught and inculcated it. The modern guides of nations, who also go under a great variety of names, journalists, political economists, politicians, pamphleteers, have entirely forgotten this and are ready to deny this. But it nevertheless remains eternally undeniable. Nor is there any doubt, but we shall all be taught it yet. Nor is there any doubt, but we shall all be taught it yet, and made again to confess it. We shall all be striped and scourged till we do learn it, and shall at last either get to know it or be striped to death in the process, for it is undeniable. When a nation is unhappy, the old prophet was right and not wrong in saying to it, "Ye have forgotten God. Ye have quitted the ways of God, or ye would not have been unhappy. It is not according to the laws of fact that ye have lived and guided yourselves, but according to the laws of delusion, imposture, and willful and unwillful mistake of fact. Behold, therefore, the unveracity is worn out. Nature's long-suffering with you is exhausted, and ye are here." So Carlyle makes an analogy between an individual who's miserable, who instead of blaming others has to tell himself that he's not wise enough. So do nations that are miserable have to point the finger to themselves, and they have to acknowledge, and he makes a huge point of saying it is undeniable. So, whether you believe it now or believe it later after a lot of pain, this is undeniable, which is that once a nation has turned away from God and has introduced all of these delusions, imposters, mistakes, fakes, unveracities, nature will exhaust itself, its patience will run out, and finally you will be miserable. I want to do a quick definition here. We shall all be striped and scourged. I mean, it obviously sounds bad, but what it means is, in this passage, striped and scourged refers metaphorically to being whipped or punished severely. The stripes refer to the marks left by a whip, and scourging, the act of whipping. So basically, this is Carlyle saying, nature or God or reality will just whip you into accepting this fact, which is that the nation that is miserable is the nation that has not acted wisely. I also found it very interesting how he makes a distinction between the ancient guides of nations and the modern guides of nations. So the ancient guides of nations were entirely religious, prophets, priests, whatever they name. Those are religious. He's not talking about kings. He's not talking about medicine men or other kinds of people. He is talking about spiritual leaders being the ancient guides of nations. And he contrasts this to the modern guides of nations, which are journalists, economists, politicians, pamphleteers. This is so incredibly modern, like even though it's written in the mid-1800s, we would very much define our nations as guided by the second rather than the first. So very interesting to see that distinction made by Carlyle here. Surely there's nothing very inconceivable in this, even to the journalists, to the political economist, modern pamphleteer, or any two-legged animal without feathers. If a country finds itself wretched, sure enough that country has been misguided. It is with the wretched 27 millions fallen wretched, as with the unit fallen wretched. They, as he, have quitted the course prescribed by nature and the supreme powers, and so are fallen into scarcity, disaster, infelicity, and pausing to consider themselves, have to lament and say, alas, we were not wise enough. We took transient, superficial semblance for everlasting, central substance. We have departed far away from the laws of this universe, and behold now, lawless chaos and inane chimera is ready to devour us. So, in some sense, Carlyle is repeating. This whole thing is a meditation. There are a couple of ideas, but if you really wanted to, you could condense this whole chapter into like a paragraph. So a lot of the paragraphs are him repeating the same substance over and over, but the creativity with which he repeats and emphasizes and strengthens his point is so delicious to see. So here first we see a roast, so we can definitely tell these are the modern guides of nations, the journalist, political economist, and we can tell how much in high esteem Carlyle holds them by basically continuing, by basically analogizing them to two-legged animals without feathers. So the roast is just cooking, even to the journalist. So, it's he's saying the fact that unwise actions lead to misery is not inconceivable even to animals like the modern guides of these nations, which is amazing. And Carlyle is saying in the rest of this paragraph, he's making an analogy between the people, the one person, and a group of people. So just like unwise actions for one person, the unit, he, lead to misery, so do the unwise actions of a collective lead to misery for the collective. And we see again the emphasis between nature and the supreme powers, laws of universe, chaos, chimera. So this is again continuing, or semblance and substance, continuing the whole God and devil analogy by many different names. So he's again taking a very ecumenical approach to his opinions. Chimera, I wanted to define here real quick. Obviously, it's used as a bad thing, chaos and inane chimera. You can't see it up here, but I'll read it. In Greek mythology, a fire-breathing female monster with a lion's head, a goat's body, and a serpent's tail. A thing, and another definition is a thing that is hoped for or wished for, but in fact is illusory or impossible to achieve. So I think the chaos, since it's part of chaos and chimera, it just is another way of saying a very unnatural mix of things, or an illusion. And the illusion part could be referring to semblance. Nature in late centuries, says Sauerteig, or the German pronunciation being Sauerteig. Nature in late centuries, says Sauerteig, was universally supposed to be dead, an old 8-day clock made many thousand years ago, still ticking but dead as brass, which the maker at most sat looking at in a distant, singular, and indeed incredible manner. But now I am happy to observe she is everywhere asserting herself to be not dead and brass at all, but alive and miraculous, celestial, infernal, with an emphasis that will again penetrate the thickest head of this planet by and by. So, first of all, let's talk a little bit about this Sauerteig. Who is he? This is here we'll see, a fictional persona created by Thomas Carlyle, a kind of German philosopher alter ego, whose name literally means sourdough in German. Carlyle often uses him as a mouthpiece for his own ideas, written in a mock Germanic style to lend an air of ironic, learned commentary on modern life and thought. And an 8-day clock, by the way, is a mechanical clock that needs to be wound once every 8 days. We don't have those anymore, so here are some visuals that no doubt you've seen in an antique shop. So Carlyle is introducing another way of saying and expanding upon his views through through this persona of Sauerteig that he has created, a German philosopher. Basically, Sauerteig / Carlyle is saying to us, nature was supposed to be dead. It was supposed to be mechanistic. You know, the late centuries being obviously late compared to the year zero, Jesus Christ. So there's obviously an understanding in Christianity that the world is devolving. It's getting worse until, doomsday. So late centuries, which very much Carlyle is thinking he's at in the 18th century or 19th century, Carlyle is saying nature was supposed to be dead. It was supposed to be set in motion a while ago, many thousand years ago. So at the year zero, and then it's supposed to just keep ticking, sort of mechanistically with the maker, with God, like not really interested in the day-to-day affairs of this world that he has created. But now Sauerteig or Carlyle is happy to observe nature is asserting herself everywhere. So and this nature is, of course, this nature's long suffering with you is exhausted. So whenever you do these unwise actions, whether people, individual people, or groups of people, nations of people, when they do unwise, nature will not just keep ticking. There will be consequences. It is a living universe, and the bill does come due in the end. It is not dead. It's not unresponsive to your actions, Sauerteig or Carlyle says. And this fact the fact that nature is alive will get through the thickest head of this planet slowly. Indisputable enough to all mortals now, the guidance of this country has not been sufficiently wise. Men too foolish have been set to the guiding and governing of it. my bad. Sometimes the sentences get me. I'll just start from the top. Indisputable enough to all mortals now, the guidance of this country has not been sufficiently wise. Men too foolish have been set to the guiding and governing of it, and have guided it hither. We must find wiser, wiser, or else we perish. To this length of insight all England has now advanced, but as yet no further. All England stands wringing its hands, asking itself, nigh desperate, what further? Reform Bill proves to be a failure. Benthamy radicalism, the gospel of enlightened selfishness, dies out or dwindles into 5-point chartism amid the tears and hootings of men. What next? What next are we to hope or try? 5-point charter, free trade, church extension, sliding scale. What in heaven's name are we next to attempt, that we sink not in inane chimera and be devoured of chaos? The case is pressing and one of the most complicated in the world. So Carlyle says, the fact that we need better guidance, that our guidance of the nation so far has not been sufficiently wise, and therefore by kind of implication to the previous paragraphs, based on the previous paragraphs, that it is this lack of wisdom that has caused us to be miserable, that much, that insight has now sank in all of England, but no further. So he's saying, okay, we need more wisdom in the governing class. That much everyone in England agrees on. And I love how so many times the consequences of the actions for Carlyle, it's not really a gray scale, it's a sort of a sliding scale. It's really 0 or 1. It is you are either with God or you're with chaos and chimera. So it's really not very there's not much middle road in Carlyle's universe. So it's either we must find wisdom or we perish. This is something that we see in Carlyle over and over again. I also wanted to just make a small commentary on the beauty of English language, where he says all England stands wringing its hands, and wringing hands has just such a very specific and great definition. It means to display one's worries about something, but not act to address it. So a very kind of specific kind of paralysis or inability to move. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about these references. So here Carlyle lists a bunch of these, like, okay, England doesn't know what to do next. And then he's saying this and that dies out or dwindles. So he's talking about a bunch of things that have been tried and failed, and have failed. And these things are, here we go. Reform Bill talks about the 1832 Reform Act, which expanded voting rights but failed to bring true moral or social improvement. Benthamy radicalism refers to the utilitarian philosophy of Jeremy Bentham, emphasizing rational calculation of pleasure and pain. And gospel of enlightened selfishness is Carlyle's ironic term for the belief that pursuing one's own rational self-interest will automatically lead to the general good, a doctrine he condemns as morally hollow. So Carlyle says, these things have been tried and failed or died out or dwindled. And England is asking itself, what next shall we try? What next shall we try so that we are not devoured to chaos? That is the question on England's mind at this point. A God's message never came to thicker-skinned, the roasts of Carlyle. A God's message never came to thicker-skinned people, never had a God's message to pierce through thicker integuments into heavier ears. It is fact, speaking once more in miraculous thunder voice from out of the center of the world, how unknown its language to the deaf and foolish many, how distinct, undeniable, terrible yet beneficent to the hearing few. Behold, ye shall grow wiser, or ye shall die. Truer to nature's fact or inane chimera, will swallow you. In whirlwinds of fire, you and your mammonisms, dilettantisms, your Midas-eared philosophies, double-barreled aristocracies shall disappear. Such is the God's message to us once more in these modern days. So Carlyle is saying, the God's message is so, on one hand, so thunderous. It is so clear and loud and obvious to those who can, to the hearing few, to those who are able to perceive it. And yet it is so, the people themselves, they are so thick-skinned, most of the people, those who cannot hear God's message, who are deaf and foolish, and many of them, they are so thick-skinned, I love this word, integuments, a tough outer protective layer, especially that of an animal or plant. So God has to practically scream this message in order to penetrate the thick skins and thick outer layers and heavy ears of people. This very obvious and thunderous message, which is, behold, you shall grow wiser or you shall die. You shall get in line with nature's fact, or chimera and chaos will swallow you in fire. You and all of your ideologies, your half-hearted, half in, half out philosophy, your materialism, mammonism, all of that will disappear. Such is God's message to us. And clearly Carlyle is very much considers himself one of the hearing few, because he is hearing this message in 1,000 different ways and in very high volumes. One note here, double-barreled aristocracy, refers to, satirically to British nobility with hyphenated surnames, which symbolizes for him the decayed, pretentious, and self-important class clinging to inherited status rather than genuine worth. The double-barreled name stands as a metaphor for empty aristocratic vanity. Nobles who multiply titles and lineage marks, but lack the moral strength, leadership, or heroic spirit Carlyle believed a true aristocracy should embody. Wonderful. Just like Carlyle's use of the language is amazing. All right. We must have more wisdom to govern us. We must be governed by the wisest. We must have an aristocracy of talent, cry many. True, most true, but how to get it? The following extract from our young friend of the Houndsditch Indicator is worth perusing. So now, there's no, spoiler alert, there's no friend and there's no newspaper called the Houndsditch Indicator. This is a reference to another one of alter egos of Carlyle, another perspective that he's going to give. And this perspective is going to start here, or rather like here, and it's going to go on for a long while. So all of this is all these like 4 pages, 5 pages or so in we are. Those are the perspective of the indicator. So up to here, this perspective is going to talk. And then Carlyle will say, we here cut short the indicator, all readers perceiving whither he now tends. So, this is the excerpt of this fictitious point of view that Carlyle is presenting us. And since we understand the gist, Carlyle is going to cut it here and switch back to his own perspective. And then, so when I initially read this, I'll set the stage a little bit. So let me tell you what ChatGPT says about this. Carlyle's friend of our young friend at the Houndsditch Indicator is a mock reference not to real person or publication, but to a type of shallow, materialistic journalist or reformer. Houndsditch was a poor commercial district in London associated with cheap trade and petty dealing, and Carlyle invents the Houndsditch Indicator as a fictional newspaper symbolizing trivial, utilitarian, and self-satisfied modern thought, the kind of press or intellect that mistakes mechanical progress and profit for true wisdom or virtue. Now, and the young friend refers to a glib young rationalist. So this is what ChatGPT says. However, I will say that's not quite, so this is a very negative light, and it might be referred to as such in other writings. Here I will say Carlyle seems to be more of an empathizing with the point of view of the young friend at the Houndsditch Indicator. I think he's basically saying, as Carlyle said a little bit before, let me find that reference real quick. Sorry, it was right here. So he says, we must have an aristocracy of talent, cry many. I think he's going to use, and Carlyle, broadly speaking, would agree with this, of course. So he's going to use this mock young friend or mock publication to expand upon what many are saying here. Okay, let's go. At this time, says he, while there's a cry everywhere, articulate or inarticulate, for an aristocracy of talent, a governing class, namely, which did govern, not merely which took the wages of governing, and could not with all our industry be kept from misgoverning, corn-lawing, and playing the very deuce with us, it may not be altogether useless to remind some of the greener-headed sort what a dreadfully difficult affair the getting of such an aristocracy is. Do you expect, my friends, that your indispensable aristocracy of talent is to be enlisted straightway by some sort of recruitment of forethought out of the general population, arranged in supreme regimental order, and set to rule over us? That it will be got sifted like wheat out of chaff from the 27 million British subjects, that any ballot box, reform bill, or other political machine with force of public opinion never so active on it is likely to perform said process of sifting? Would to heaven that we had a sieve, that we could so much as fancy any kind of sieve, wind fanners, or ne plus ultra of machinery divisible by man that would do it. So here Carlyle is giving an opinion, and the opinion is kind of reacting to this, okay, we need an aristocracy of talent, and the journalist, the young friend, agrees, but says, where are we supposed to get this aristocracy of talent? He's even, this young friend is kind of talking back to the cries of many that want more wisdom, because they're saying, we don't have the process to get this wisdom. Here, I'll also make a couple of definitions. So, playing the very deuce. Deuce is an old reference to the devil. And so playing the deuce is... I think I've had it somewhere, but maybe, I did not quite get it here. I didn't ask it to ChatGPT, so I'll just say playing the deuce is kind of toying with the people. And greener-headed sort is a reference to just green being new. So it's a reference to naive, inexperienced, or immature in judgment. And other things to define. Wind fanners are... I think they're literally here it's referring to an agricultural tool, because we're talking about sieves and how to separate the wise from the unwise. So it's talking about an agricultural tool that fans away, which separates chaff from grain by blowing away the lighter stuff. So, So this opinion and this young friend's opinion is that is to rail against the masses that want more leadership by saying we don't have the mechanisms to get this leadership. And the newspaperman is asking, do you expect that there's some kind of human sieve, a human filter somewhere that will input 27 million British subjects and output the wise people that need to govern us? There is no such mechanism, it is argued in the fictitious newspaper. There's no mechanism of whether it's through the ballot box, through some bill, through the political machine. We can't get these people. We can't find these people such that we may even appoint them to the governing class. Another quick point I wanted to make is the phrases like political machine or ne plus ultra are some of the things that make Carlyle's prose seem so modern. Like, these are very much used today and in quite the same way. So it's pretty interesting to see how modern his speech feels. So the newspaperman continues. Done nevertheless, sure enough it must be. It shall and will be. We are rushing swiftly on the road to destruction, every hour bringing us nearer until it be in some measure done. The doing of it is not doubtful, only the method and the costs. Nay, I will even mention to you an infallible sifting process whereby he that has ability will be sifted out to rule among us, and that same blessed aristocracy of talent will be verily, in an approximate degree, vouchsafed us by and by, an infallible sifting process to which, however, no soul can help his neighbor, but each must, with devout prayer to heaven, endeavor to help himself. It is, O friends, that many of us should acquire the true eye for talent, which is dreadfully wanting at present. The true eye for talent presupposes the true reverence for it. O heavens, presupposes so many things. So, quick definition. Vouchsafed means grant, give, accord, award. So, granted legitimacy to is the way it's used in this sentence. And in this paragraph, Carlyle is saying, so what is this thing that needs to be done? What needs to be done is the reference, even though we don't have a mechanism to find the wise people that need to govern England, the wise people do need to be found, and they do need to be governing England. And it will be done for sure in the end, but the only thing that will change is that maybe the method and the costs will change. So the more, referencing back to previous chapters, the more delayed this comes about, the more the costs will be. That's the only thing that will change. Eventually, nature's patience will run out, and the right people, the rightful order will be restored. That's the opinion of Carlyle. And he's saying, there is an infallible sifting process, but one that you can't help anyone else to see or to get. It is something that every person in himself must change, which is very much referring to the Morrison's pill and the shift in internal perspective, so that externally you are now influenced by the right things. This is a reference to that. Carlyle is saying you need to have a true, or have or acquire the true eye for talent. And he's saying that this is severely lacking in the British population in the present. Then he utters this, or writes this sentence that I completely loved, and it's something I'm going to meditate on for a while. He says, the true eye for talent presupposes the true reverence for it. So you can't really identify wisdom, identify talent, unless you revere it, unless you have like an internal disposition towards it. So very interesting, very fascinating. Another way of saying it is that talent of the kind we're talking about here, which is like a certain quality of leadership, of wisdom, of being able to answer the Sphinx riddles, of being able to read the signs of the times, that sort of talent, people need to have an eye for it. And that sort of talent, sorry, I forgot for a second where I was going with this. Yeah, I was mainly just connecting it, I suppose, to the previous ones. But that kind of talent, it needs to be revered in order to even be found. For example, I was going to say that sort of talent is incommunicable because it almost implies that to see it, you need to revere it. And if you don't revere it, you won't see it, and you won't be convinced by arguments for it. So I just thought that was those were some interesting ad hoc connections in my mind. For example, you Bobus Higgins, sausage maker on the great scale, who are raising such a clamor for this aristocracy of talent. What is it that you do in that big heart of yours, chiefly in very fact, pay reverence to? Is it to you? Is it to talent, intrinsic manly worth of any kind, you unfortunate Bobus? So before we go much further, I want to say a little bit about Bobus Higgins, sausage maker on the great scale. So this is a comic invention for as you've seen so far, before I even go on, like Carlyle likes to talk through characters. He's a one man, but he's giving us a sense of the dialogue. And by the way, Carlyle is very much opinionated, but he's giving us a very different points of view. He's painting the caricatures sometimes, or painting characters sometimes of different people, and exaggerating them like cartoons, like caricatures, so that we may see the contradictions that are demanded of different people. So here, Bobus Higgins, sausage maker on the great scale, is a recurring character in the Carlyle cinematic universe, and it refers to a wealthy industrialist or businessman who mass produces goods like sausages without higher moral purpose or moral sense. It symbolizes soulless commercial success. So he's asking, so he's going to give, for example, by the way, we're still obviously continuing the young friend who's writing for the, what was it, Houndsditch Indicator. So this young friend is talking now, like, we need a sifting process, as we've decided. And that sifting process, it's written on the heart of every man, sort of. It's the ability to identify the true talent. And now the young friend in the Houndsditch Indicator is gonna kind of say how improbable it is to find talent with the kind of people that exist in England, and not just any people, but wealthy people, influential people that exist in England on his day. So he's gonna mock Bobus Higgins, and he's gonna say, okay, so if we need like if to pick talented people, we need to identify them. We need to have a true eye for them. And in order to be able to identify them, we need to revere talent itself. Now let's look, does Bobus Higgins revere talent? So he's going to say, okay, Bobus, what is it in your heart of hearts? In your heart of hearts, what do you respect? Is it talent? Is it intrinsic manly worth? The manliest man that you saw going in a ragged coat, did you ever reverence him? Did you so much as know that he was a manly man at all, till his coat grew better? Talent. I understand you to be able to worship the fame of talent, the power, cash, celebrity, or other success of talent, but the talent itself, is a thing you never saw with your eyes. Nay, what is it in yourself that you are proudest of, that you take the most pleasure in surveying meditatively in thoughtful moments? Speak now. Is it the bare Bobus, stripped of his very name and shirt, and turned loose upon society, that you admire and thank heaven for? Or Bobus with his cash accounts and larders dropping fatness, with his respectability, his warm garnitures, and pony chaise admirable in some measure to certain of the flunky species? Your own degree of worth and talent, is it of infinite value to you, or only of finite, measurable by the degree of currency and conquest of praise or pudding? Measurable by the degree of currency and conquest of praise or pudding it has brought to you. Every sentence is delicious, so let's take a little bit closer look. So Bobus, the wealthy industrialist, saying, did you ever, if you saw a man in a ragged coat, the manliest of men, did you ever respect that man? Or could you not respect him until his coat grew better? In the modern sense, until he had some brand names on his coat. And here, this is just a wonderful phrase called the fame of talent. So the young friend in the Houndsditch Indicator argues that a man like Bobus Higgins is blind to talent itself, never saw with his eyes. He can only see the fame of talent, the power, the cash, celebrity, other successes, the accoutrements, the shadow of talent. But shadow is kind of a wrong phrase, because every object has a shadow, but not every talent might necessarily have the power or the cash to go along with it. So Bobus is only able to perceive the fame that talent has been able to acquire. And not only is this true for other people, says the young friend, he says this is true for Bobus when he is introspective. What Bobus likes about himself is not his own, bare self, stripped of his name and shirt, so no titles, no material possessions, just the Bobus himself. Is that what he values? Was what Bobus values? Or Bobus with his cash, with all the accoutrements of his own talents? Bobus doesn't even value talent in himself. He only values what he's been able to get with it. So interesting. I'll do some definitions here. So larders means a room or large cupboard for storing food. So larders dropping fatness, just other way of saying the wealth. Warm garnitures, and garnitures are a set of decorative accessories, in particular vases. So again, just the accoutrements, the garnitures of the wealth. And pony chaise, admirable in some measure to certain of the flunky species. So here, a pony chaise is a small, light two-wheeled carriage drawn by a pony, essentially a modest personal vehicle, and the flunky species refers sarcastically to servile, status-worshipping people. So in the previous chapter, these were valet people. And I found it so funny and so modern that the admiration of someone's car or carriage was very much a thing in Carlyle's time as well. Just fascinating, and another one of the ways that Carlyle is so modern. Okay. Now the indicator will have its final word about Bobus, and then we'll cut short. So we'll stop with the point of view of the young friend on the indicator. Bobus, you are Bobus, you are in a vicious circle rounder than one of your own sausages, and will never vote for or promote any talent except what talent or sham talent has already got itself voted for. This is another one of those sentences that made me meditate. It's saying, since Bobus is blind to talent itself, he can't really vote or promote any talent. Since he can't, we already know he can't recognize it. But the interesting thing is he can't even vote for or promote it, because the things that Bobus can see, talent has already got itself. The money that talent has been able to acquire, or sham talent, Bobus will not know the difference. That's a thing that talent, to the extent that it has already acquired it. It cannot be, in other words, Bobus cannot act as an amplifier of talent or a promoter of talent. Bobus is of no use to talent at all. Just fascinating. More wisdom indeed, but where to find more wisdom? We have already a collective wisdom after its kind, though class legislation and another thing or two affect it somewhat. On the whole, as they say, like people like priests, so we may say like people like king. The man gets himself appointed and elected who is ablest to be appointed and elected. This is just a hilarious sentence. What can the incorruptiblest Bobuses elect, if it be not some Bobusismus, should they find such? So, here Carlyle is saying it's not even about corruption per se. It's just that people are not, if they don't worship a sense of talent, if they can't even see it, if they don't revere it, as Bobus does not, clearly, in a very detailed description of him. Bobus, even if he's completely pure of heart and incorruptible, he will just elect a more distilled and incorruptible version of himself. Elect or appoint. And I love this phrase. We know, I think like father, like son is a thing we know. Like people, like king is also, I think, somewhat modern. So people say, countries get the nations, nations or countries get the leaders they deserve. That's very much a modern sort of realist international sentiment. I've never heard of like people like priests. Just fascinating, very interesting. Another thing that one needs to meditate on. But basically saying if there is no reverence for talent, you shall see no talent. If the people don't recognize something of the numinous, they will get no priest that can connect them to the higher God. So just interesting, fascinating. Or again, perhaps there is not in the whole nation wisdom enough to collect it as we may, to make an adequate collective. That too is a case which may befall. A ruined man staggers down to ruin because there was not wisdom enough in him. So clearly also may 27 million collective men. But indeed, one of the infalliblest fruits of unwisdom in a nation is that it cannot get the use of what wisdom is actually in it. Carlyle's prose, while amazing, is just like a little bit difficult for me, even though I've already read through it to kind of read through fluently. But so occasionally I'll just repeat myself. But indeed, one of the infalliblest fruits of unwisdom in a nation is that it cannot get the use of what wisdom is actually in it, that it is not governed by the wisest it has, who alone have a divine right to govern it in all nations, but by the sham wisest, or even by the openly not so wise, if they are handiest otherwise. This is the infalliblest result of unwisdom, and also the balefulest, immeasurablest, not so much what we can call a poison fruit, as a universal death disease and poisoning of the whole tree. So here Carlyle is doing something interesting. So, he's saying, he's making a couple of arguments. So, okay, more wisdom is needed, we all agree, but where are we going to get it? And one reason we're not going to get it is that if the people lack the ability to see talent, they're just going to keep electing and selecting, or whatever system they have is going to keep electing and selecting the people that are, even if in their incorruptible form, just more distilled version of the leaders that also are unwise. So one reason we're not going to get good leaders is just the people are not capable of seeing them and finding them and promoting them. The other thing is that maybe, perhaps there's not enough wisdom to even collect. Just like a ruined man is ruined because there's not enough wisdom in him, so it can be the case with a nation of men, that there's just not enough, let alone the problem of finding them and promoting them. Maybe they just don't exist in enough quantities to be found and be collected. But he's saying, either however we come about, there's also another infallible fruit of unwisdom, which is that, and this is going to very much echo Carlyle's general sentiment of being 0 or 1. You're either aligned or completely unaligned, and there's not much middle ground, which is that if you have like 40% wisdom, you won't be led in a 40% wise direction, but it will tend towards 0, because Carlyle is saying that it's not so much like out of 10 only 4 are usable, but the 6 are poisonous. So it's a universal death disease. It may start with a few rotten apples, but they will spoil the bunch. The couple of unwise will poison the whole tree. For hereby are fostered, fed into gigantic bulk, all manner of unwisdoms, poison fruits, till, as we say, the life tree everywhere is made a upas tree, deadly unwisdom overshadowing all things, and there is done what lies in human skill to stifle all wisdom everywhere in the birth, to smite our poor world barren of wisdom, and make our utmost collective wisdom, were it collected and elected by Rhadamanthus, Acus, and Minos, not to speak of drunken 10-pound franchisers with their ballot boxes, an inadequate collective. So this is a giant sentence, but basically Carlyle is saying, hereby, so in this way, all the kind of unwisdoms and poison fruits, all the unwise actions, they grow and grow until the whole tree, the life tree, becomes a upas tree. And a upas tree refers to, let's do this definition. A upas tree refers to a tropical Asian tree, the milky sap of which has been used as arrow poison for ritual purposes. Also, it is a tree. I think in this case, it's a more apt reference. A second definition is a Javanese tree alleged to poison its surroundings and said to be fatal to approach. So the whole life tree turns into a poisonous tree, one that is not half alive, it's not a little bit alive, it's just like destructive to all of its branches and its environment. And Carlyle, again, it's a very paints a vivid imagery of the unwisdom doing violence to wisdom. So it's saying the unwisdom is overshadowing everything and does everything in human power to stifle wisdom in its crib, to smite the world of wisdom. So this unwisdom is not merely ineffective, it is actually actively dangerous to all wise actions. Carlyle, as we can tell, he has a very collectivist spirit. Like Carlyle would not be someone to say, well, if you do it, across the street by yourself and you don't harm me, then there's no problem. No, Carlyle sees an active damage and danger in all unwise actions, whether they're taken privately or publicly, everywhere, to the wisdom everywhere. And a couple of other references. So in terms of the sentence, he's saying, so the last part of the sentence is, make your utmost collective wisdom an inadequate collective. So the unwisdom is doing everything it can to make the collective wisdom inadequate. Even if this collective wisdom were collected and elected by these figures. So now we're going to talk about the figures. These are the three judges of the dead in Greek mythology. Minos gave the final verdict, Rhadamanthus judged the righteous, and Aeacus judged those from Europe. So even if basically you had divine judgment in how you found and collected these people, if there's just too much unwisdom slushing about in the society, it's going to stifle and drown out the collective wisdom. The wisdom is not now The wisdom is not now there. How will you collect it? As well wash Thames mud by improved methods to find more gold in it. So once unwisdom has burnt through whatever wisdom you could find and collect, there will be none of it left anymore. It's, once again, like the unwisdom is actively poisonous and deadly to wisdom. So once unwisdom is done working, you won't find wisdom anywhere. And you might as well wash the bed of the Thames River by the mud of the Thames River by improved methods, so by even more judicious ways of finding the wisdom. You won't get it. There's no more gold in it. Truly, the first condition is indispensable, that wisdom be there, but the second is like unto it, is properly one with it. These two conditions act and react through every fiber of them and go inseparably together. If you have much wisdom in your nation, you will get it faithfully collected, for the wise love wisdom and will search for it as for life and salvation. If you have little wisdom, you will get even that little ill-collected, trampled underfoot, reduced as near as possible to annihilation. For fools do not love wisdom. They are foolish. They are foolish, first of all, because they have never loved wisdom. I do need to read this again, but let's go through it. But have loved their own appetites, ambitions, their coronated coaches, tankards of heavy wet. Thus is your candle lighted at both ends, and the progress towards consummation is swift. Thus is fulfilled that saying in the gospel, to him that hath shall be given, and from him that hath not shall be taken away even that which he hath. Very literally, in a very fatal manner, that saying is here fulfilled. Our aristocracy of talent seems at a considerable distance yet, does it not, O Bobus? So just, I feel like some epic film music should be composed to a narrator far greater than myself when they're reciting these lines. It is so, so beautiful. Let's go through this a little bit. So, what are these first and second conditions that Carlyle is talking about? Well, first you need to have wisdom in your society so that you can get out of this misery. But the second condition, the one that basically throughout this chapter Carlyle has been emphasizing and has been expounding upon with multiple viewpoints, it is that you not only need, the priest is useless without people that can hear his message, right? Or the same like people like priest or like people like king. You need the right human substrate to recognize talent. And by the only way they will recognize it is to revere it. So you need a wise population. It's not only the presence of wise people by themselves that would technically be able to, let's say, staff a governing class. Their presence is not enough. You need a broader mass of people that are also wise themselves, because they are the only ones that can, because they love wisdom, they will search for it and they will promote it, they will find it, they will elevate it. And if you have little wisdom, you will get even that little wisdom, you will not even be able to make use of that little wisdom, because the majority who are fools, who are foolish because they have never loved wisdom, they will, because they don't love it, they will not value it, they will not cherish it, they will not put it high, they will trample it. So this very much is like a market for lemons. Like you either keep a healthy marketplace or it turns into a market of lemons, and there's not much room in between. Some of these references to define coronated coaches is referring to luxurious vehicles, basically, with emblems of nobility, cars with emblems of nobility inside it. And tankards of heavy wets are referring to large mugs of strong beer or ale. So, the people, they will just drown out any wisdom that even exists because of their appetites, ambitions, their indulgences, basically. So Carlyle is saying the candle is lighted at both ends. Like you're basically these two conditions. It's going to be difficult to find them, and the more difficult it is to find the wise people, or the less wise your society is, the less you're going to be able to make use of the wisdom you even have. So it's very much you need a large, broad swaths of the population to be wise, to be able to make use of the wisest in the society. And that saying in the gospel, this is like the legendary Matthew 13:12, the one that you see it all the time in Western literature and Western discussions even to this day. This is one of the reasons that Carlyle's prose still feels very relevant, because of all the Bible quotes and stuff that I've come across years and years in the West, this is the one that is the most prominent, which is that whoever has will be given more, and they will have in abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. This one is also, this Bible quote is also the one that Jordan Peterson, when he first broke out into mainstream, was addressing, like the meaning of this. And it's just very, very interesting how Carlyle's focus is very much aligned with our modern focus. And yeah, that has been my reading of Aristocracy of Talent.